Hey, thanks for joining me. Today we're going to unpack the incredible story of Malaysia, a nation that was literally forged from the remnants of ancient empires, powerful sultanates, and centuries of colonial ambition. All right, let's get right into it. So here's something that might surprise you. The country we call Malaysia, it's actually a pretty new idea. As a single, unified nation, it only came into being in 1963. But, and this is the important part, the story of the land and its people, well, that goes back thousands, even millions of years. So that's the big question, right? If the country itself is so young, where do we even start the story? Well, to answer that, we have to go way, way back, deep into prehistory. See, to really get modern Malaysia, you have to understand that it's not just one history, it's many histories, all woven together. And our journey begins with the very first human footprints found in this part of the world. And wow, this timeline really puts it all in perspective. We're talking about stone axes that are nearly 2 million years old. That's some of the oldest evidence of early humans in all of Southeast Asia. Then you fast forward to about 40,000 years ago, and you get the first modern human skull found in the Nayag caves. After that, you see these waves of migration. Farmers start arriving, and then around 1000 BC, the Proto-Malays settle in, the ancestors of many of today's indigenous groups. Okay, let's jump forward to the age of empires. You have to look at a map to understand this. The Malay Peninsula is sitting right in the middle of this major superhighway of ancient trade between India and China. Its location basically guaranteed it was going to become this amazing melting pot of cultures, ideas, and power. And these connections happened super early. By the 1st century BC, there was already this busy trade network. And it wasn't just about swapping spices and silks, it was about swapping ideas. The local kingdoms soaked up Hinduism and Buddhism. They started using the Sanskrit writing system, and for a massive chunk of time, over 600 years, this whole area was a major part of the powerful Srivijaya maritime empire. And this image, this just says it all. You're looking at what's left of an ancient Hindu temple in the Bujang Valley. This isn't just a pile of old stones. It's hard evidence, you know? It's physical proof of a complex civilization that was deeply tied into the culture of India long, long before Islam or Europeans ever arrived on the scene. So after the Srivijaya Empire faded, it left a power vacuum. And into that gap stepped a new force, one that would come to define the entire Malay world. This is a huge turning point, the arrival of Islam and the beginning of what's really considered a golden age. And this right here, this is one of the most important artifacts in all of Malaysian history. It's the Terengganu inscription stone. It lays out Islamic laws, even specific punishments for crimes. It's concrete proof that Islam wasn't just a new religion here. It was becoming the foundation for law and order. The story of this whole era really kicks off with one guy, a prince from the old Srivijayan line, a guy named Parameswara. He's on the run, he escapes his enemies, and he ends up in this little fishing village. And the legend goes, he saw this tiny mouse deer bravely fight off a hunting dog, and he thought, hey, that's a good omen. And right there, he founded a port and called it Malacca. And that small port just exploded. I mean, look at this map. Malacca didn't just become a big deal, it became the most important trading hub in Southeast Asia. It controlled the Straits of Malacca, the choke point for all trade between the Indian Ocean and the South China Sea. It was the heart of Malay culture and the primary engine spreading Islam across the entire region. But all that wealth, all that power, well, it didn't go unnoticed. It was like a magnet, attracting a totally new kind of power from halfway around the world. And this kicks off a long, complicated era of European colonial rule. Now, here's the thing you gotta remember. This wasn't just one colonial power. It was like a Game of Thrones. First up, the Portuguese storm in and take Malacca in 1511, chasing after that lucrative spice trade. Then, about 100 years later, the Dutch team up with a local sultan and kick the Portuguese out. And finally, the British arrive, and through a mix of treaties and force, they eventually take control of pretty much everything. And these two images tell that whole story of changing hands. On the left, you've got this epic sea battle from the 1600s. That's the Dutch taking Malacca from the Portuguese. Then jump forward 200 years, and on the right, you see the British raising their flag in Borneo. It was just this constant jockeying for power and resources. The British weren't just after spices, though. They wanted stuff for their factories back home. So the economy became all about two things, tin and rubber. They even brought rubber tree seeds all the way from Brazil.
But to get all this tin and rubber, they needed tons of workers. So they organized this huge wave of immigration, bringing in laborers from China and India. And that decision, it completely reshaped the country's social fabric forever.
And that brings us to the 20th century. And man, things are about to get intense. That whole colonial system, which seemed like it would last forever, was about to get shattered by war. And that kicks off this long, difficult journey that eventually forges the nation we know today.
The big catalyst was World War II. When the Japanese invaded and kicked the British out, it just shattered the myth that the Europeans were invincible. Now, the occupation was absolutely brutal, especially for the Chinese community. But it also ignited this powerful desire for self-rule. At the same time, though, it made the tensions between the different ethnic groups even worse.
So after the war, the British come back and they have this new plan called the Malayan Union. The idea was to give everyone equal citizenship, but it also stripped the traditional Malay sultans of their power. Well, that went down horribly with the Malay community. It sparked massive protests. The British had to scrap the whole thing and came up with a compromise, the Federation of Malaya, which kept the sultans in place.
But at the very same time, a whole new conflict explodes. It's called the Malayan Emergency, a brutal 12-year-long guerrilla war fought in the jungles against communist insurgents. It was a terrible conflict that delayed independence. But here's the strange, unintended side effect. It actually forced the leaders of the Malay, Chinese, and Indian communities to cooperate against a common enemy, which kind of laid the groundwork for a future multi-ethnic government.
And finally, this is it, the moment it all led to. This is Independence Square in Kuala Lumpur. After all the negotiations, the conflicts, the compromises, on August 31st, 1957, the Federation of Malaya became an independent nation. A really historic moment, achieved through diplomacy, not just revolution.
But the story wasn't quite finished. The leaders of this new country had an even bigger idea. So, 6 years later, they pulled it off. The now independent Federation of Malaya joined together with the former British colonies of North Borneo, Sarawak, and Singapore. And in 1963, that new, larger federation became the nation of Malaysia that exists today.
So when you think about it, from ancient human tools and Hindu temples to a glorious sultanate to a complex colonial society, all of these different layers, all of these different histories were forged together into one modern country. It's an incredible story. And it leaves you with a big question. After coming through all that, what will Malaysia's next chapter be?